Welcome to Latitude 40, brought to you by the Furno Collective. This podcast celebrates the heart, soul and history of the Furno Group, told by the people who call these islands home. Here we share stories of island life, of resilience and connection, of land and sea, of old ways and new beginnings, from the windswept shores to the heart of our communities. Each episode captures a piece of what makes this island life so unique. So islanders and visitors alike, settle in and join us as we explore the stories that shape the spirit of the Furno Islands, one voice at a time. Hello and welcome to Latitude 40. I'm your host, Jacqui Cooper. Thank you so much for joining me today. On Flinders Island, stories aren't often written down, they're lived, in the rhythm of the seasons, in the work of the land, and in the people who shape this place over time. My guest today is one of those people. He arrived here as a newborn, crossing Bass Strait in a rather unusual way, lying in the drawer of a cupboard on the boat, and was raised at Woodlands in Emita, the eldest son of dairy farmers Jack and Doss. Over the years, he's worked in many roles across these islands: a stockman mustering cattle on Flinders and the outer islands, a farmer, a shearer, and a good one at that, with multiple wins in the annual quick shear event. He's managed farming operations at Happy Valley and Prime Seal Island while building his own life on Wandella in Lacrana and more recently on Macrimmon in Emita. He's someone who has contributed quietly but consistently to this community. A long-serving member and for many years Fire Chief of the Lacrana Fire Brigade, and still today serving as livestock steward for the Flinders Island Show Society, where he's been awarded a life membership. When I spoke with Steve Crawford, who worked and farmed closely alongside him for many years, he told me he learned simply by being there, working beside him, talking in the catching pen, between sheep, absorbing his knowledge and his passion for farming wool and wool sheep. And he said something that stayed with me. I idolised the man. It was never on my radar to host a podcast, let alone to have the opportunity to sit down and record a conversation like this. Today, I'm speaking with my father, John Cooper, about a life shaped by family, farming and community here on Flinders Island. Welcome, John. Can I call you Dad?
Yeah, of course you can.
So, Dad, what do you know about your family history on Flinders Island?
Well, my grandparents on my dad's side arrived from King Island, actually, in 1911. My Auntie Mary was only a few weeks old when they came, and they settled at Woodlands. My grandfather had been over. Him and his brother came over from King Island to have a look at Flinders, and they actually bought land around Emita and quite a bit of land at Polana. And I think that they bought the land at Polana because there wasn't many trees on it, and it was just roughly native pasture and whatever.
So any stories from those early years that have stayed with you when your grandfather started farming on the island?
My dad tells me that at some stage during their farming career that they had these bullocks and they had to go off to Welshpool to be sold, and they went on the boat from Port Davies and they didn't have the right paperwork with them, so they let them out on the beach and they shot them all. It was his whole yearly income. So what does he do? He turns around and he sells most of the land at Polana and retains a bit of Emita and had a dairy farm there, or two dairy farms. My grandfather's sons, he had a dairy farm, and Dad ran the dairy farm at Emita, yeah, at Woodlands.
That must have been heartbreaking for them.
Yeah, pretty hard for him, yeah, pretty hard for the old fella, yeah.
And so on your mum's side, there's a connection to lighthouse keeping. What do you know about that side of the family?
My grandfather there, he was a lighthouse keeper. He was transferred from lighthouse to lighthouse around Tasmania. They were on Tasman Island and what's the other one down there?
Matsyka,
yeah, Matsyka. They were on Swan Island for a while and down the Tamar River. And Mum reckons she had a really good life travelling around like that. She had a horse or a dog and always had a cow for milk and butter.
And they took those from island to island, or?
I don't reckon they did. I reckon once they got there, I reckon they stayed there because it was pretty hard on Tasman and Matsika in particular, where they had to winch everything up and down the cliffs there and winch them up with a horse. Had to, of course, turn the horse around and reverse it slowly too to take the stuff down. And, of course, they only got supplies there sort of every 3 months or so. It's a pretty hard life those days.
I reckon. And so how did your mum come to live on Flinders Island?
My mum, during the war, she joined the Land Army. She worked around in Victoria there for a little while, and she came to Flinders Island to work for Cyril Robinson, who was her uncle. And that's when she met my dad.
And so what do you remember about your parents starting out together, particularly their life farming at Woodlands?
Well, before that, they used to have there was a hall at Emita, just below where the cenotaph is now. There was a dance there every week. Mum and her cousin would dress up and come in the buggy with a horse and buggy, and they'd dance all night and then go home and milk the cows.
Yeah, right.
And that's where she met Dad, at a dance. It sort of went on from there.
Yeah. So you arrived on Flinders Island as a newborn, and the story starts with your mother, Doss, placing you in a drawer of a cupboard, ensuring your safe passage on the boat to get home. What are your earliest memories of growing up on the farm at Emita?
The cows, I reckon, in the cow shed.
Yep.
I had these big milking shorthorn cows. They were as quiet as quiet. And I can remember, you could touch them, you could pat them and whatever in the bale. And I can remember climbing up the side of the bale there and sitting on one of the cows. One of them must have been really quiet, yeah.
So do you know how many cows they milked there?
It'd be about, never got much over 30.
And so as a young child in a busy dairy environment, how did your parents manage to keep you safe while they got the work done?
They used to put you in a cream can. They put you in the cream can with something to eat, I suppose, and a blanket or something, keep you warm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, you were safe.
And that's what everyone did.
Yeah, right.
When I had little kids like that, they put them in a cream can or, something like that, just to keep you away from the belts and whatever else that were going on and, keep you safe.
And is it right? I think I remember your brother, Peter, telling me that he used to get hung in a sack if he was naughty.
If we played up a bit, he'd catch you and put you in a chaff bag and hang on the fence. And you couldn't get out.
No, that's right. Some childcare tips.
Yeah.
Yeah. Living on the island at that time, it was a long trip to Whitemark. How did your family manage to get groceries and essential supplies?
Usually on the cream truck. You'd send an order down with the cream truck. He'd come out every second day or 3 times a week and pick up the cream, take to the butter factory, and on the way he'd take all the orders, any grocery orders, he'd take them down and Mrs. Bowman would go through them and she'd scratch off the ones she reckoned you didn't need and put
just
together
have the
order.
essentials. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you remember who had the cream cart back then?
Yes, I remember vaguely Jack Gardner, and he used to whistle all the time. And my dad tells me a story where he got this new truck. We had to cart the cream out into the middle of the paddock where we kept the cream in a cool shed, so it was out in the wind. Anyway, old Jack comes down and he's driving around the cream shed. He couldn't stop the truck. He's yelling out, "Whoa, whoa!"
Oh, dear. So when your father would kill a lamb, he often shared meat and other produce with others in the community, and I think even your mum made some bread. What role did you play in that?
He'd give us a parcel of meat for someone, someone that wasn't going so well or someone that didn't have access to that sort of thing, and we'd just take it on the horse to wherever. There was a few people, a few big families around the place, and sort of later on I remember there was an old bloke called Harry Armstrong at West End, and the old man would, he'd give him a few chops or a shoulder of meat or something and put it on the school bus. Mm.
Lovely thing to do. So life on the farm must have kept everyone busy, but of course school was part of life too. Where did you go to school and what do you remember about those school days?
School, I quite liked school actually. We went to school at Whitemark Area School. Our bus driver was Ray Faulkner early in the piece. We'd stop at the Emita Church corner there and we'd play marbles for about half an hour. And that happened just about every day. He loved playing marbles, and he'd draw this big ring, and we'd put the marbles in, and he'd keep the ones. He'd eventually give them back to you, but he'd keep the ones he won.
The one, he took them. Yeah. So did you have a favourite teacher back then?
Yeah, Miss Chilcott.
You also had a teacher who later went on to teach your youngest daughter, Nikki. Do you remember who that was?
Yeah, that was Mrs. Blunston, and she taught me, and she taught our girls. I don't know how long she was there at the school, but she was there a long, long time. She probably should have been the principal because she was pretty tough on everyone. I remember she used to take us for singing sometimes too. I remember one time we were singing there and Colin Brown was standing next to me. He's singing Old Black Joe and we're supposed to be singing something else, and I started to laugh, so I'm the one that got into trouble. Got a whack with a ruler. Yeah.
He would have thought that was funny.
Yeah. Brownie, he was always up to something. Yeah.
So once your school years came to an end, what direction did life start to take?
The first proper job I got was actually with Brian Stackhouse, and I had to have my horse and dog and cut lunch, and the first thing he did, he gave me a box of matches. And we'd be mustering. They had access to a fair bit of land then, all of Marshall Bay and Pine Scrub and Carnax. So we'd be moving cattle from one place to the other and all that stuff. And as we'd go along, like there'd be a little patch of tussocks or something like that, and you'd just drop a match there, and it might burn half an acre, it might burn 5 acres. But you never have a big fire because it was always a bit of burnt stuff, and it was also produced feed for the cattle as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. All those tussocks would come up. As soon as you got a rain, they'd be up, and they were soft feed for the cattle, for cows anyway.
And that prevented some of those bigger wildfires that we get today.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we never had a big fire like that ever. There'd be a fire through the summer, but it'd be, it'd go out and burn itself out because there'd be little patches of green stuff here, there and everywhere, yeah.
So can you describe what it was like moving stock around the island?
There'd be one or two of us and always had a good dog. Brian always had good dogs. We'd move cows and calves a few times up to Pine Scrub, which is up near West End. Sometimes we'd stay overnight. There was a bit of a hut there. We'd tie the horses up to the big old fig tree and stay the night, do some repairs and maintenance on the yards or whatever, ride back again. Or we'd take cattle out to Carnax, out along the 5 Mile Road. And there's no fences, of course, but you had good dogs, yeah.
It's a long way, a really long way.
Well, I suppose it is, yeah.
At what point did you start working as a stockman beyond Flinders Island, like on
the outer islands? Yeah, well, first trip I went out to Hogan's with Brian, and we went on the Shearwater. We had some young cattle on there to go on to Hogan's. We stayed out there and made some water troughs, and that was hard work because you had to carry those big bags of cement they were those days. You carry them up the hill there and dig out the soak and make a water trough underneath it.
Right.
And fence it off. And I think we did 3 of those there. There was no hut or anything there. We just had an army tent. And I remember we'd been there a while, and one night this boat came in there called the Plover. He went round and round in the bay there just about all night, catching cooter. Then he went back to Welshpool or wherever he came from, yeah. Of course, we were there for about 10 days, I reckon, 10 or 12 days. So the bit of meat we had would have gone, we were eaten.
Yeah.
And it was in the mutton bird season. We had a dinghy, so we rode out to a little patch of rocks and got a good feed of mutton birds. Yeah, caught a few rockfish. And we actually came home on the Mary Norling, which is another fishing boat that used to fish down round Sisters.
Right.
So he brought us back to Killicranky.
And so how did he know to come and get you after 10 days?
No. He was in the bay fishing. He was in the bay getting cooter. And Brian rode out and saw him, and he said he was going down to the Furno group in a couple of days. So he took his load of fish back to Welshpool and then picked us up on the way down.
Right. And you still had plenty of water at that stage?
Yeah. We had drinking water and made a cup of tea and whatever. But we always had a wash in the sea. Stripped off and in you go.
Yeah.
Have a wash every day.
After a hard day at work. So what are some of the other islands that you went to?
Well, on Hogan's, we had 120 bullocks there. They were about 3-year-old. And we'd take 60 off and put 60 young ones on there. And you just swim off the boat. Had a race running out and with no end in it, and they'd just jump off into the water. And they'd swim out. A couple of times you'd have to get the dinghy out, to head them back. If the wind was blowing the wrong way, they want to swim into the wind all the time. Right. So you'd have to turn them back so make sure they go onto the land. Yeah. Right. Otherwise, they just go into the wind till they die.
Wow. So they just jump off the boat.
Yep.
And swim into the island.
Yep.
And you head them into the island, basically.
And make ssure they go onto the land, yeah.
I bet it's a bit of a shock for them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they'd be climbing up rocks and things because most of the time they didn't go to the beach. They'd go into the rocks.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. But they got there all right.
So can you describe how was it that you swam them back off the island to get on the boat?
We'd have a bull rope off the main boat, off the Lady Gillian mostly, that I worked with. You'd have a bull rope onto the shore and you'd put a headline on the bullocks. My job was to put the headline on and make sure it didn't choke them and made sure it didn't come off as well.
Jeez.
So a pretty responsible job.
Yeah, and they're pretty wild cattle. They haven't seen humans.
Well, they're quiet until they let them out with a head rope on them. They're quiet enough. And one of the things you do there when you're working those cattle is you don't talk. You have someone in the yard with you, or in my case I was on my own most of the time there, but you just have a long stick and you just poke them here and poke them there and don't talk because they're not used to that. Yeah, they get spooked a bit, otherwise, yeah. Mm. And you can have the wildest ones that'll probably chase you, but we get them in the yard.
They settle down.
Just sneak them into the race and put a headline on them, hook them onto the bull rope, and then you wave, 2 hands wave, everything's okay. 2 hands up straight, was you better stop because we're in trouble.
Right.
Yeah.
And they'd start winching them.
Yeah, they'd winch them out into the water. Once they got in the water, you could handle them pretty well. You keep their head up and you'd tie their head up on the workboat so they didn't get water in their nose because they'd drown really quickly.
Right.
Yeah. My times going there, I went there a fair bit. My times going there, I think we only ever drowned one that I remember anyway. Mm. So we just hung him up and butchered him up there, yeah.
So it's a very unique operation, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you got to take the right people.
And they don't have cattle out in those islands now, do they?
No, unfortunately, which is bad, yeah, I reckon. If you look around all the islands and the amount of money that they generated was a lot of money.
So are there any musters on the outer islands in particular, but any really, that stand out in your memory, perhaps for how tough they were, or was there a time when something happened unexpectedly?
We had trouble getting there was 40 bullocks on Erith, and we knew the boat was coming in sort of 2 or 3 days' time. We had to get them yarded, and we were having trouble getting them yarded. Brian, there was a couple of leaders there, and Brian shot one, and he shot another one, and he shot 3, I think, before Stormy and I said, well, Brian, we're not going to have any cattle left here, keep that up. It was funny because it was a moonlight night. I had a lot of moon there at the time. So I don't know whose idea it was. We'll cut a good long stick each and we pointed it, put a point on, a nice sharp point, and the cattle would go into these little scrubs and camp in there. They just stop there and go into these little clumps with the cattle in them, and you wouldn't talk. You just walk in there and they'd be quiet, because they thought it was another cow coming or something or whatever, and you'd jab them up the arse with a stick and they'd rush out and they'd go to the next one. So you'd follow them over there and they'd all be in there, stand there with their heads down, and you'd jab a few of them up the arse with a stick and they'd all run out. And we got them in one evening, yeah, got one night.
Wow.
Yeah, them into the holding paddock, and the next day all we had to do was just get them into the yard. We only ever did that once. There wouldn't see many people there for a long time.
And being on foot without any horses there?
Brian took a horse there once, but it wasn't really suitable.
So were there some islands where you rode horses for stock work?
Yeah, on tin cattle we did. Tin cattle we rode a horse there to do the mustering, yeah. Took a good dog and didn't have so much trouble, no.
So, Dad, before UHF radios and mobile phones, when you were on the outer islands, how did you stay in touch with people back on Flinders Island?
Well, on Hogan's and Erith, you had a lighthouse keeper on Deal Island.
Oh, yeah.
So he was okay. There was always fishermen around Hogan's, so you contact with them somehow, that you just have to go down the beach and wave your hands or whatever. And on the Sisters, the first thing we did when we get there was we'd have 3 fire heaps up on the hill. So that Miss Bly she was, and later Eddie used to check at 6 o'clock every night, and if we were in trouble, we could light 3 of them, get something there soon because we were in trouble.
Emergency.
Yeah. 2 was, I'm not sure what 2 was now, but most of the time we were all okay. We ran out of food once there on the Inner Sisters. We used to run 4,000, used to shear 4,000 sheep there.
Goodness.
Yeah, 4,000 corridors. We ran out of food there once, and we had this big roo dog, and we were trying to catch a hare.
Oh, yeah.
And so he'd line this hare up, and he'd be chasing this hare, just about to grab the hare, and the hare would take him sideways. The dog would do a big lap, but we never ever caught a hare.
So did you light one of the fires so that someone brought you some food over, or?
We lit a fire to say, we want to get off there, we're finished.
Oh, yeah, we're done, yeah.
But the weather was no good to get a boat out there.
Right.
I remember Chesty, he caught a few sheep because he wanted milk in his tea. He didn't like black tea. So milk a sheep and get a few cups of milk.
Yeah.
Well, he didn't have a fridge or anything, of course.
No, they were a pretty hard time.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough.
But we killed a lamb and we had meat.
Yeah.
About all we did have, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, right.
We were there for 3 or 4 days with virtually nothing. But we were right. We're fine. Didn't hurt us.
No. So sheep farming was a big part of life on Flinders Island. Can you describe the sheep and wool industry on Flinders in its prime?
Oh, it was a going industry. Put a lot of money around in the economy of Flinders. Yeah, we used to have, I think at the peak it was about 320,000 sheep, and we would have had 3 permanent gangs of shearers going, pretty well all the year round. There was a lot of money generated having a lot of sheep. And there was other work as well, through the winter time some of the Rouseys would be working on farms, doing a bit of farm work, drenching sheep or whatever, and during the winter we'd be crutching sheep.
Yeah, well, with sheep, there was always a job, wasn't there?
It was always a job, yeah. Generated a lot of money.
So when the soldier settlement farms were first established, there was only one shearing shed at Mamana. What do you remember about those early shearing days?
Well, there was only the Mamana area settled. They didn't have any shearing sheds, so they built a big shed down there next to Alan Lamont's place it was. I think Scott Anderson's got that property now. And everyone used to walk their sheep down there, and there was 3 shearers.
Yeah. Take it in turns, taking your mob in and...
Yeah. Take their sheep down there, get them shorn, and they had a big manual Kurtz press, press the wool. I remember working down there once, and Brownie and I were rouseabouting, and they were crutching these sheep, and they were dirty. Brownie's wheeling the dags out in the wheelbarrow. And when we knocked off, I got to come home, my car was absolutely full of dags.
He'd been putting them in your car.
You had them in the boot and in the back seat, the front seat, everywhere. Yeah. I got him back though. I put a dead rooster head under the back seat of his car. It smelt for ages, yeah.
There was a celebration of wool on the island with the blessing of the fleece. Can you tell us about it and paint a picture of what that day was like?
We had a padre here those days. Well, most of the time, yeah, we had a padre here. So they have a blessing of the fleece. It's someone's property. Someone would shear the sheep. I got to shear 2 or 3 sheep at different places. People would gather around and they'd have a little service, as in they do with, the blessing of the fleet. Yeah, you got a good crowd there, and they'd have barbecue or something afterwards.
Great way to involve the community.
I suppose so, yeah.
And there were some difficult periods for the wool industry. How did those times affect farmers on Flinders Island?
They were pretty hard, actually. Like interest rates went through, and we were paying 23% at one stage, and the reserve price scheme collapsed. They had all this wool, so they charged us 25% of our wool clip to service that. And in our situation, we had 2 girls away at school, and the headmaster at the school, he was a good bloke, a real good bloke, because we rang up and said, we wouldn't be able to keep the girls at school the way it's going. And he said, oh, it's all right, it's all right. He said, you'll pay sometime, you'll be right. And we did.
That's huge, isn't it? And so in those tough years, how did the farmers pull together and support one another?
We shore for each other, and the shearers would shear, the rouseabouts would work, and, there was very little money changed hands. You'd shear for your neighbour or whoever else. It'd be a work exchange, really. There was very little money changed hands.
Yeah, great sense of community.
Yeah. In our situation, we just shut the gate, didn't spend any money on the farm, just did what we had to do, for a few years. Yeah.
Yeah.
And got us through. You just got to buckle down.
Yeah. And just as a side topic, over the years you've kept rainfall records. When did that start, and how many years of annual rainfall history do you have now?
I think it goes back to 78.
And you've still got all those records?
Yeah, we've still got the original records, yeah.
So it was obviously from 1978 was when you and Mum bought Wandella.
Yeah.
What did it take for you both to make that happen?
We sold everything we had. Just kept the ute and not much else. We had a nice little humpy at the Northeast River, a nice little shack up there, and we had to sell that. It was pretty hard to sell that, yeah, because, like you girls used to...
Yeah, I loved that.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Mum loved it, yeah. Yeah. Anyway, we sold everything and put it into the farm and got started. We had no money to buy livestock. And we're at Pony Club one day, and I said to this bloke, I was just telling him that, we had no money to buy livestock. We're not sure quite how we're going to get the money to buy some livestock. And he said, Jesus, Coop, he said, I've got 15,000 sitting there. He said, you can have that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he lent you the money to buy the livestock?
Yeah, he just gave me the money. I paid him 10% interest. And he said, you keep it for 2 or 3 years. I had it paid back in the first year, at the end of the first year.
Oh, amazing.
We got it started, yeah. And we just bought cast for age ewes. You could buy them for $2, join them to a prime lamb, and eventually got into the wool industry, yeah.
And speaking of that, interestingly, I was speaking with Steve Crawford about the years that you spent shearing together. He'd taken over the shearing team from Leo Foster and Steve Skews.
That's right.
And he said working beside you really shaped his work ethic. He also talked about the long days that you and Mum worked, shearing all day and then going home and continuing on with the farm into the night. What do you remember about that period of your lives?
It was good when we were shearing because Crawford and I would shear alongside each other and we'd just talk farming all day.
That's what he said.
Well, I'd be away shearing and Mum was nursing, so she'd come home and she'd muster a mob of sheep and we'd crutch till midnight. And then go to bed.
Yeah, long days.
Then up at 6 and away again. And, we didn't have that many sheep. We probably only had maybe 1,500 sheep then. And Mum used to wean all the lambs on her own. She could work the dogs good.
Yeah, so Steve said that you had a real passion for wool and wool sheep and that you were generous with your knowledge. He also said that because of all the questions he asked in the catching pen, he earned the nickname Tony Barber.
Yeah.
But what was it about wool and sheep that really sparked that passion in you?
Being a shearer, you get to shear bad wool sheep and good wool sheep, and I just love the feel of really nice wool, soft wool, and after a while, you get to shear those really good wool sheep that just, I don't know what it does to you, but it just makes you feel good. I reckon, Crawford had a real thing about wool, and he produced the best wool flock of sheep on the island.
Right.
He had a really good feel for wool and a real good eye for wool.
Fantastic. Nice to have someone up the road, not too far away, that shared the same passion.
But we'd talk sheep and farming all day when we were shearing. And we'd shear fairly good numbers, I'd sort of school myself to try and shear 160 a day.
Yeah.
Well, I reckon we probably did better than that. Yeah, but we'd still be talking.
Yeah. And Flinders Island isn't immune to dry seasons. What's been your experience farming through drought over the years, and what's helped you to get through?
I was always told by the older guys, when it becomes really dry, you destock, or you destock before it becomes really dry. And I always did that, always destocked, never bought feed. And then we got this consultant that came over and he had a field day thing and we got involved with this stuff. And he said, oh, no, you don't sell your stock. He said, you buy feed and you do this and you do that. Well, we spent a whole heap of money that year buying feed, and what do we end up? A heap of thin cattle and thin sheep that you couldn't sell, and you ended up shooting a whole heap of sheep.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah. So I never did that again. I always remember to destock early, hang on to the money, buy in early.
And horses and dogs weren't just companions, they were essential workmates in those days. What role did they play for you day to day?
Well, I always had a good dog in a shearing shed that everyone could work. We used to take a dog round with us. Some of the sheds you went to, the dogs weren't much good. You know, a good working dog, you just can't beat a good working dog.
Yeah, and over the years you've trained many working dogs, but one in particular stands out to me, a little black Smithfield called Sue. And she was a bit mischievous. Can you share with us the story of what she stole?
Yeah. It's a bit embarrassing, actually. I went up Conways Road to get them over sheep in, and this lady and her grandchildren were walking these cattle up the road. That's fine, you know, I'd let her walk past the gate, and then I sent a dog round to these sheep of mine and brought them out onto the road, and I couldn't see where my little dog was. She disappeared. I thought, oh, that's funny. Anyway, I thought she must have gone home for some reason. Anyway, I take my sheep down the road, go inside, have a cup of tea, and all of a sudden this lady comes down the road and she says, "Your dog stole our cows." I said, "What?" I looked around and here's the little dog, Sue. She'd stolen these about 40 cows. She'd stolen the cows past this lady and her kids. And she had them in the sheep yards, and she's sitting in the gate.
Guarding them.
Yeah, guarding them, watching them. Yeah, yeah.
At some point, you and Mum began expanding Wandella. What led to that decision?
Oh, we're both hungry for more livestock.
Didn't have enough work.
Well, it's not really more work. It was good. We had a couple of thousand acres eventually out there. And I think, you know, you get big enough so that we employed a little bit of casual labour, but not much, and you could do the rest ourselves. And it takes out the highs and lows a bit of a farming enterprise. If you've got enough livestock there to take out the highs and lows, it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. And I've been speaking to a few people, and I don't think they'll mind me naming them. So there was, you know, Croft and Macca and Tom. And they kept coming back to the same things, that you don't do things in halves, but it pays off, and that your cattle are your number one priority after Jen, and that you've always been generous with your knowledge, especially with young farmers starting out. You're part of the farm discussion group here on the island, a group that comes together to learn from one another, support each other, and share both the challenges and the wins. What is it you enjoy about being part of that group?
I enjoy seeing the young fellas getting going and doing well. You know, there's such a lot of information out there now that we never ever had when we were starting off. I mean, if you saw your neighbour doing something better than you were, you would go and do what he did. That still applies, I suppose, but being involved with these younger guys that are really switched on, doing the job well, it's really good. Yeah, I've got a lot of time for those young fellas that are doing a job really well, and it's good to see, and they're getting good results. It's good to be involved with those young fellas, yeah.
And Macca said that he loves the fact that you know the history of what's been in every paddock on the island. You can tell them what was grown here, 50 or 60 years ago. Yeah. So you spent some time farming on Prime Seal Island, which is a 1,220 hectare island, about 21 kilometres west of Flinders Island. How did that come about, and can you describe the operation and the logistics?
Yeah, well, this bloke called George Jennings rang me up once and he said his manager was going into hospital for an operation. He said, would you be able to sort of oversee what was happening out there? And I thought, oh, yeah, just go out there, once a fortnight or whatever. Anyway, the bloke that had the operation, he didn't come out of hospital, poor bugger. So I sort of took over the job there, I suppose. It was a bit of a mess. There was about 400 sheep there, and They were lousy as cookers and they were full of sand. Every run we were wheeling out half a wheelbarrow full of sand from under the table. Yeah, they were terrible condition. And hard to muster because as soon as they heard a motorbike or anything, they all headed into the bush. But we changed all that. I sat down with George one day and we went through about the things we needed to do there and had a budget of about 80,000 to get things back on track. We didn't spend all of it that year. George was pretty happy about that and we got good results. First thing we did was get the lice out of the sheep. When we mustered them, we made sure we got everything. You know, we'd go back and get everything. And so the first shearing I did there, we got the old water dip going, pumped that out, cleaned it out, put a bit of a yard up there, and every sheep that was shorn went through that dip and we never saw lice again.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was really good. And we produced some really good wool there. We were shearing about 1,800 sheep after a while and got the wallaby population down. We had good grass and, when it was paying for itself. I don't think you wouldn't have made much money out of it, but maybe 10 grand or something. But those islands are they're expensive to run and hard to run.
Can you describe how you would get the wool bales off the island?
Yeah, get the sheep off there too, because previously to me going there, they used to shoot all the old sheep.
Oh.
Yeah. We'd line the bales up down onto this flat rock, and when we moved the sheep off, we'd take maybe 50 at a time. So if we lost them, we only lost 50, not 300, you know, and ran them down sort of a laneway with the bales of wool onto the rock, and the barge come in and he'd sit the gate down there and we'd run the sheep straight onto the barge. And it worked well. Didn't lose any.
Great.
I had one or two jump over, but the dog would bring them back and jump back in again. And then we'd put the wool on. We ended up shearing about 1,800 there for the last few years, cutting about 70-odd bales of wool.
That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, it was good.
And did you enjoy your time over there?
Oh, I
with
just
George?
loved it. I loved it. The two blokes we had working with us over there, they just loved it after a while, once we got things in order. And we did some fencing there, and so we had 7 paddocks and we had a rotation of a fortnight in each paddock so that we had grass for the sheep, also for the wallabies, of course, but we used to cull the wallabies and we had a good little setup going there, yeah, really good.
So, Dad, at 80, most people in the community think you're bulletproof. You still head off to gym a couple of times a week and you eat what you grow and hunt and gather. At one point, though, your health forced some big decisions, the biggest being to sell Wandella and the farms on the east coast. When you look back on those years at Wandella, everything that you and Mum built, what are you most proud of?
Oh, we had a good farm there. We had good ground, we had good pasture, and it was a really good setup we had there. Yeah, Mum was really good.
Pretty amazing, isn't she?
Yeah, she knew the job inside out. I got a muscle disease thing that I lost all my muscles, and the specialist said, you need to go home and have a good think about what you're doing because you won't be doing it for long. We decided to settle out there and keep the place at Emita, and probably jumped the gun a bit. Anyway, he said, you're going to have this thing for 5 years at least. Anyway, I reckon 3 years and I was out of it, and I went off all the medication. I reckon that it probably took 3 months for it to get out of my system. I woke up one morning, I thought, geez, I feel good. I feel real good, just like that. And previous to that, I was battling to get myself out of bed. I couldn't make proper decisions, and, it was all...
It was pretty tough, wasn't it?
All getting too hard, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sad we sold that, but anyway, it is what it is. I'm still doing what I like doing anyway.
That's right. So, Dad, outside of farming, you've been involved in community life on the island. What did that look like for you over the years?
Well, we've always been involved with a bit of sport. Once Mum and I were married, we played badminton, tennis still, and we're part of the clubs, fair part of the clubs. Fire brigade, joined the fire brigade about 1980, I think.
And I remember you mentioning there used to be the Flinders Island versus Cape Barren Island
football team,
matches.
yes,
Yeah. Did
yeah.
you play in those? And what do you remember about
Yeah, I
those
played in a
games?
few of those, yeah. And the King Island used to come here every second year as well. But going to Cape Barren early in the piece, we'd take the police boat. It was a big, it's probably about a 50-footer diesel-driven sailing boat, and we'd all climb on there. There'd be probably, I don't know, be 30 or 40 people on it. Plenty of beer and some for the boys over on Cape Barren. Once it was pretty hot and we took the beer down and put it in the creek and played the game of footy, went down to get the beer and there wasn't one bottle left.
Someone had a few drinks.
They'd knocked her all off. They were good games because, sometimes we'd win, sometimes they'd win. Yeah.
And you and Mum played badminton at Country Week in Launceston. What was it like representing Flinders in those competitions?
Oh, we were pretty proud to represent Flinders Island, actually, yeah. And we actually won Country Week one year, yeah.
Some of the places that people gathered were built by the community themselves, like the Emita Hall. What do you remember about how the hall came together?
Peter Hay gave us the ground there at Emita Hall. I think it must have been about probably only 50 acres, I suppose, but he donated that and we wanted to build a hall there. It was built mostly on donations and what the club raised on sports days. And a bloke called Rodney Fowler, which is Dick Fowler's son, he was a builder and he built it. And, when he wanted a hand with anything, everyone would turn up to do the roof and the floor and all that stuff. He'd just say when he wanted us and we'd be there, yeah.
So once it was built, what kind of events and gatherings stand out in your memory?
Oh, the sports day was, it was always a good day. It was New Year's Day. It was good horse events, a few running races. I remember David Anderson used to win the marathon every time, just about.
Is that right?
Yeah. Only a little fella, but he's a good runner. And there'd be bowling at the wicket, all those sorts of things. And we'd have to shoot home and milk the cows, of course.
Yes.
Yep, ride the horse home and milk the cows and back for the dance at night.
And the very first Emita sports were held at Little Plain. Can you describe where Little Plain is?
Yeah, Little Plain's down on the coast below John Dygan's house now. It was part of Grant Hayes' property and it's a nice flat area there and the hill comes up on the south side nicely and you could park your cars there and you could look out over the whole lot.
Right.
They were good days as I remember. I didn't compete in them because I was too young, I think. But I can remember, George Fisher, he donated the Snake Gully Cup. He had a four-wheel buggy and he had these two big grey draft horses. He'd turn up there and it had Snake Gully written across the side of the buggy and also had ribbons on them and,
Oh, wow. Really fancy.
Oh, she was. She was fancy, all right, yeah. And they were good horses too. That Jacqui at Thule, he had thoroughbred horses there and he used to bring some of them up. Happy Valley had some thoroughbred horses. They'd bring them up and Bert Moyle had good horses. George Harley had a couple of good thoroughbred horses.
And as a young man, you rode your horse to the show. Where were the showgrounds then and what was the show like in those?
The first show I rode down to was in Whitemark. The paddock behind the church there now, near the abattoir, there was a paddock there. They used to have all the show part there and then the jumps were all across the road from there. And, of course, there was water in all those lagoons those days.
Right.
Yeah, behind the hydro buildings, that's where we had the jumps there, yeah.
And in later years, you and Mum were entering livestock, wool and competing in sheepdog trials. What stands out to you about that time?
I was pretty involved in the setting it all up. Yard dog trials, and I was fortunate to win a few of them too. Trevor Nichols had a good dog, he won. We had a lot of competitors too. A lot of the ladies had, they'd work a dog, yeah.
It might be nice to see that again.
Yeah, it'd be good. But, they had different things. You had chooks and ducks and all sorts of things those days and bales of hay to be judged and...
Oh, right.
Yeah, fodder competitions and all those sorts of things.
And there's a story about a bending race at the show between a motorbike and you riding Flicker the horse. Can you describe the race and the atmosphere of the crowd at that event?
Yeah, that was good. I used to look forward to that every year. The crowd they'd be backing the horse, of course. They'd be around the rails there, just as thick as you could get people. Everyone would be there watching them.
And cheering on the horse.
Yeah. He was a good little horse, that horse. He could bend. He could go through the bending race and the motorbike. George Woolley rode the motorbike. The first time we did it, the horse just was too far in front, so we put the bending stick, we put them wider.
Oh, yeah, to give the motorbike a bit more room.
Motorbike a bit more chance, yeah. But no, we could clean the motorbike up every time, even though it was pretty wide, yeah. I could go faster on the horse, yeah. And he was good, yeah.
The crowd right behind you.
Yeah, and the crowd, they'd be roaring, yeah.
So, Dad, you were a part of the Lacrana Fire Brigade for more than 50 years, including 22 years as fire chief. How did you first become involved in the brigade?
We never had a brigade here on the island, and Jim Grace virtually started it. And I think we were living at Emita then, so we just had a little crew at Emita, $2 or $1 or something it was to join. But we had no equipment.
Oh.
We had no equipment at all. And it wasn't until probably the early 80s or later. No, it would have been later, I reckon. We had a little fire tanker at Emita that you tow with a tractor. We had a little fire tanker at Lacrana and just a 1,000 litre or 2,000 litre fire tanker that you'd tow with a tractor.
Right. You weren't going to get there fast then, were you?
No. It wasn't until later years that we got a truck, yeah. Right. Yeah, the first truck came to Whitemark, and then they got one at Lady Baron, and I remember going to a fire. The tanker was at my place, this tanker, and it was full of water. I had a David Brown 990, and I had to get to a fire at Allen Stackhouse, as it is now, and it took forever to get there, Yeah. Yeah, I had to go around the road because the track up the back track was too sandy.
And a few steep hills.
And you're pulling a big heap of water, yeah.
So there would have been some tough times along the way, including the 2003 fires, which is still fresh in the mind of many islanders. What do you recall about that time, and what was your role during that fire?
I was the fire chief at Lacrana, so I spent a lot of time. When the first fire first started, we were shearing, and so Jenny looked after the couple of days we had left while I went and supervised this fire at Lacrana. And then, of course, as the fire got bigger, because it was in Crown land and you couldn't get in there with anything to stop it, so we just had to keep it out of the grass. And, we never lost a building. Never got onto the grassed area seriously. We had people with, motorbikes and utes and people with wet bags. It was just incredible. And then when the westerly went round to the east, everyone had come over this side to protect the buildings and whatever on this side. And, yeah, she was a hard 6 weeks. I remember going home about 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm thinking I'm nearly home. I turned down Conway's Road and got on the gravel and went to sleep. Next thing, I'm off the road.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, she was pretty tough going there for a while. Long hours, yeah. Jim Grace did a marvellous job, no doubt about that.
So what was being part of the brigade, what did that mean to you?
Oh, well, it's a community thing, isn't it, and I found it was good to train a lot of people that they were good with their hands, but they couldn't do the exam stuff, they couldn't do the paperwork. So I used to sit with them and they'd do that and I'd get them through and so they could work on the truck and they were available. They were really good people.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So alongside all the work over the years, family life has been a big part of it too. Mum's been beside you through it all. How would you describe that partnership over the years?
Yeah, Jen's the love of my life. And, I couldn't do it without her, I don't think. Yeah, we've been lucky. We've had 2 girls and everything's been good. Yeah.
Yep. And you're still in love at 80, both of you.
Yeah.
It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yep.
So you've recently turned 80 and you're still surrounded by people you've known most of your life. How does it feel to look back on those years, having shared your life in this community?
Oh, it's gone really quickly, hasn't it? Too quick. We're looking at the point here now. And, but I've had a good life. I think Jen's had a good life.
And you've loved it here on the island, haven't you?
Yeah.
Wouldn't want to be anywhere else.
I've never had to, to go off the island for work. And, Flinders Island's a good place to farm.
So looking ahead, what advice would you pass on to the next generation, whether it's about farming or life in general, or just caring for this island?
There's not too many people here. So the thing about Flinders Island is it's a community place. It's not so you don't know your neighbour or like down the street or anything like that. It's a really community place, and anyone in trouble only got to ask. You can help them.
You'd like to see that continue?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If we get too many people here, it all disappears. And so does what we've got. If you want to build it up like the Gold Coast, go to the Gold Coast, I reckon. Keep Flinders as good as we can keep it, for as long as we can.
So, Dad, listening to you reflect on your life, what stays with me isn't just what you've done, but how you've done it. The long days, the hard seasons, the quiet decisions, and the work carried out without fuss. And at time, the remoteness of those outer islands and just how resourceful and brave you had to be. It's a life shaped by partnership, especially with Mum, by a deep connection to the land, and by a willingness to contribute to those in the community around you. And maybe that says more than anything else, because in the end, it's not just about what you build or achieve, it's about how you show up, the example you set, and the way you leave something of yourself in others. Thank you, Dad, for sharing your island story today. I feel incredibly fortunate to have had this conversation with you.
Thanks, Tal.
We acknowledge the ancient history of the Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the first people of Lutruwita, Tasmania. This episode is recorded on the lands and waters of the Furneaux Islands. We recognise the continuing spiritual and ancestral connections of Tasmanian Aboriginal people to these islands, and we honour the strength, resilience and living culture of Aboriginal people today.